Hello, participants. Welcome, welcome. Thank you all so much for calling in. We can see our attendee count climbing. We will begin our formal hellos in just a minute. We want to make sure we give everybody the chance to sign into the webinar. Thank you all so much for joining. We've officially surpassed 100 participants. And still counting. Hello, hello, welcome everybody. All right, slowly but surely climbing. While we wait, I'm going to launch our poll. Great. So for those of you who are coming in out of the waiting room and signing into the webinar, welcome. We're going to give everybody just a minute to get out of that waiting room and into our webinar. There is a poll if you are interested in participating. We'd love to have your participation. Hover over the bottom of your screen and you can find that while you wait. All right. And it looks like our attendee count is leveling off. So we can officially go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody. My name is Rachel. I am one of the members of the Petco Foundation team. I am so excited to be here today to be able to bring you yet another one of our webinars for new fosters and new adopters. All of you have the ability to raise your hand in the chat. Can you all raise your hand if you can hear us, if you can see us, if everything looks a-okay to you? All right, those hands are going up, so it tells us we did something right. Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for your participation. Before we get started with Victoria Stilwell, our special guest and our host for today, I do want to introduce our president of the Petco Foundation just to say a few things to you all. So Suzanne, take it away.
Hey everyone, how are you doing today? Hey, just want to say from all of us at the Petco Foundation, we want to thank you for fostering or adopting during this time. You are truly saving a life, and we appreciate you so much. As Rachel said, there's a poll. Love to see your answers in the poll. It's very interesting to learn, to see who's a first-time foster, a repeat foster, maybe a first-time adopter. And really, we set these webinars to provide some support. And also to make your experience a more positive one. And hopefully maybe if you're a first time, you'll want to foster again. If I was filling out the poll, I would be a repeat foster with lots of other dogs in my house. And I can't wait to hear from Victoria about how to live successfully with them. I think they view it as being successful if I open and close the door every time they want to go in and out. That seems to be my job for the day while I'm home. So I just want to say, a lot of you right now are fostering for a lot of animal welfare organizations throughout the country. Just want to always remind everyone to just keep in mind that now that organizations around the country are sort of doing the best with what they have during this very difficult and challenging time. So maybe a little patience, kindness to them. They may not be as responsive as they normally would. But they're doing great work out there, also continuing to save lives. And I know that they are also thankful for all of you. So, but let's get started with why you're really here. And it isn't to hear me, it's to hear Victoria Stilwell, who is a dog behavior expert. And I also want to add that she is a huge animal welfare and rescuer advocate. And in fact, just in a few weeks, we partner with Victoria on a series called Unsung Heroes, highlighting the work of great rescuers and animal welfare champions throughout the country. And you'll see that on the Petco Foundation site. You'll see that released soon. And it's just a wonderful series to show the incredible work being done. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Victoria to teach us how to live successfully with dogs.
Hey everybody. Oh my gosh, I'm so pleased to be with you. I'm so glad that I can impart my favorite knowledge to you and my favorite thing, which is dogs. Thank you again, Suzanne, for all the work that the Petco Foundation are doing, especially at this time. I mean, like you always do, but especially at this time with helping dogs get out of shelters into the to foster situations and also adoptions as well. It is so needed. The shelters around here are doing pretty well, but you know, still need more fosterers, still need more adopters, because we don't know how long this is going to go on for. So anyway, thank you so much for asking me to do this, and I'm excited to tell you and get this started about how you can live successfully with dogs. So without further ado, let's get going. All right. Okay. So I hope that you can see my screen now, and that my dogs are my passion. They've always been my passion. And I really started my career in rescue. And I started learning about dogs by being a dog walker for actually the Battersea Dogs Home in London, and for other smaller rescues where I lived in Wimbledon, including the Greyhound Rescue. So that's where I started and began sort of my passion, not just for dogs, but for rescue as well. And since I've become a trainer, I've been able to use everything that I've learned in shelters and to be able to teach around the world and give information to rescue organizations. But I guess that a lot of you know me from It's Me or the Dog, and I hope that for those of you who watch the show, that you got a lot of information about your dog at home. Now, the reason why I did this show, the reason why I created it, was because I was a trainer in Manhattan. This was about 20 years ago, and I was sick of the waste of life that I was seeing in the shelters of Manhattan and the 5 boroughs. I volunteered for an organization called Cause for Paws, and every weekend we would set up outside a little pet store. I think it was on 82nd, 81st Street in Amsterdam. We would set up our little booth outside and have the animals out there for adoption. Whilst we were doing that as well, because there were so many animals and there just weren't enough homes, we also, my husband and I, became fosterers. Now, bear in mind, we lived in a tiny, tiny 1-bedroom apartment. And for the 2 years that we lived in the city, we fostered about 40 dogs and cats, not all at the same time, but we fostered all kinds, from German Shepherds to Shih Tzus. And after 9/11, we actually adopted Angelica, we call our 9/11 cat, that we adopted her as well, because she, you know, it was so hard for us to have the animals in our care and to let them go, but her we couldn't let go, so she stayed. So I really empathize, sympathize, thank you for being fosterers and also for adopting. I wanted to be able to get the message out about training to a large amount of people, and I didn't know how to do that. I was angry about the fact that, yes, some of these dogs were coming to the shelters because people didn't have the money to look after them anymore because of different circumstances. These dogs were relinquished to shelters, but a lot of them were being relinquished to shelters because of behavior problems. So how could I get the message out to people to be able to say, hey, look, there's something you can do. You don't have to relinquish your dog. There are things that you can do. And one night I was watching the first episode of The Super Nanny that had just come out on ABC, on American television, and I was like, oh my gosh, I do that with dogs. So I wrote my idea, and It's Me or the Dog was born. And It's Me or the Dog filmed for about 9 to 10 years, and we did around 110 episodes. So it was a labor of love, and even from the beginning of my first seasons, I evolved as a trainer even more. So I was sort of, some of the advice that I gave, maybe I really don't do anymore now, but so much of that information is still relevant. And a lot of that information I'm going to impart to you. Now, as Suzanne was saying, I love the Petco Foundation for so many reasons, but one of the reasons is because we do an amazing show with them called Unsung Heroes. And this came because I met Suzanne at Fulton County Animal Shelter, which is the shelter, our municipal shelter here in Atlanta. And they were giving them a lot of financial help because they needed it. And so I met her when there was a big presentation there. And we walked around the shelter, and I took her to the back of the shelter where the animals were. And some of the sort of the bite cases and the animals that were not adoptable, that were court cases and things like that. And there was one man there, one man that looked after all of these dogs that were in crisis situation, one man, and his name was Booker. And I remember Suzanne said, really want to be able to do something to recognize people like that. And that's how Unsung Heroes was born. So thank you, Suzanne, and thank you for trusting us. And we're on our 3rd season now, and you'll be able to see them at the end of April. And so watch them and nominate for your favorite one, because there's one person out of the 5 stories that we did that becomes the National Unsung Hero 2020. So it's an amazing, I think, heartwarming, uplifting series, and it shows so much of, yes, that there are problems, there are issues, but rescue is also positive, right? There's so many positive outcomes when these animals are rescued, and so many incredible people that are working with no desire for anything except to see these animals go into new homes. So they don't think of themselves, they don't want any accolades, but you know what? We choose them and we give them to them. So Unsung Heroes is a labor of love. Now, you've already answered the poll about what brings you to this webinar. And of course, a lot of you, I was looking at the poll, a lot of you saying you're either new adopters, you're 2nd, 3rd, 4th time adopters, you are new fosterers, or you fostered before. And so I think the challenge of making this webinar applicable to everybody, even if you're not a foster, even if you're not an adopter, you just have dogs, that was for it to translate well for everybody. And so that's why I wanted to give a more sort of a generalization of how dogs think, feel, and learn, and how you can best organize your time to look after them effectively, so that when we get back to some semblance of normality, if you are a fosterer, your dog will be ready to be adopted. Or if you have adopted a dog and you might have some challenges, or you're struggling a little bit, hopefully I can give you some great tips on how to deal with those challenges. If I don't get to your question at the end, because we are going to do a Q&A, then please visit positively.com, which is my website, and you will get loads of information and answers to different training questions and behavior questions. So I wanted to put that out there now so that you have resources if you need. Okay, so successful relationships with dogs, they start with understanding, which is a no-brainer, right? Understanding. But what does understanding look like? So sure, we might know when a dog wants to eat. We might know when the dog needs to go to the bathroom. We might know if the dog is happy or is feeling sad, or if the dog is unwell. We might know those things, but and that's obviously a part of understanding, but how do we truly understand our dogs? That's what I want to highlight today, because understanding the dog that you have in your living room right now is the key to being able to teach that dog effectively and to either prevent behavior problems from occurring or to deal with them if they do occur. And so we're going to talk today about understanding that dog, whether it's a dog that you have just got or a dog that you've had for a while. I hope that I'm going to be able to tell you some things about maybe the dog in your home that you haven't thought of, or that you didn't know about. So first of all, I want to spend a little time on talking to you about how dogs think. It's really hard to actually see how dogs think. And though we can anthropomorphize, right? We can put a lot of human emotions on dogs for what we think they're thinking. But how do we know what they are truly thinking? Well, for years, we haven't been able to find out until a man called Dr. Gregory Burns. And as we go through this, I'm going to be telling you about people. I'd like you to write it down and investigate. Go online and find out more about what they're doing. So the first person is Dr. Gregory Burns. And he was the first person, he's at Emory University in Atlanta, that designed a mock-up MRI machine in his living room and taught his dog to go inside the MRI machine, lie down really still for 3 minutes, wearing earphones, because MRI machines, if you've ever had them, are really loud, and lie very still, awake, all done with positive reinforcement. People thought he was crazy, but he's like, this is a moment that we can, with technology, finally see how dogs are thinking. And so fast forward to a real MRI machine, where his dog by this time is like, yeah, this is no problem, goes into the real machine, lies down there, earphones on, machine is turned on, Cal lies very still. And finally, for the first time, researchers were able to see inside the dog's brain without the dog being anesthetized. And before, Dr. Burns had taught Callie all these different signs. So, for example, this meant a treat was coming. This meant a treat wasn't coming. So when he did this sign to Callie, all of a sudden what they saw in her brain was an area of the brain called the caudate nucleus that lit up. We have it in our brains too. It's our pleasure center, like our joy. When we feel joy, the caudate nucleus lights up. The same thing happened in the dog's brain. Subsequent studies have shown that when people walk through the door into the MRI machine, or they to the area where it is, or they see their person through the window, that area of the brain lights up. So that we know that things like food, seeing somebody they know and love, brings a dog joy. And this is huge, because we now can finally say, yes, reinforcement, positive reinforcement works. It works. And you know, it doesn't just encourage dogs to learn, it makes them feel good too. So when we're talking about how dogs think, I want you to go on their website and Google Dr. Gregory Burns and find out more information about the functional MRIs they've done, the way they've taught the dogs, and what they're discovering about the way dogs think. So finally, because of technology, this is happening. And it's very exciting for trainers and behaviorists like myself that we now have such great research to back up everything that we're saying. So everything that I'm telling you today is all backed up by scientific research. And I'm not just talking about awful research with dogs in cages and things like this. No, this is done with owned dogs. So people will go into universities and animal behavior centers and they will do challenges and play with their dogs, and researchers will be there to sort of test how dogs are operating. And that's the kind of research that I'm talking about, that's really showing us the dog's cognitive processes. Now, we also know that dogs have the cognitive abilities of 2 to 3-year-old children. And why is that? Because a lot of the way that they process information and that they learn and that they're able to recognize and communicate is the same as a 2 to 3-year-old child. Let's take the human point, for example. Now, I want you, after you've seen this webinar, to start working with your dog and to really get to realize what gestures your dog is looking at and responding to. Right, so let's take the human point. If I point there, that gesture means absolutely nothing if no context is attached to it. But because we humans have attached context to this pointing gesture, we learn to point to things so that other people will look where we point. And babies start to learn this skill from about 9 months of age, human babies. Dogs can do it from around 6 weeks of age. They start to learn that what you're pointing at, that they follow that human point to an object that you're pointing at. And this is really incredible because it shows that dogs are watching our body language. Yes, they listen to us and they'll listen to our vocal language, but dogs are actually watching us as well. So this is really exciting. And for when you're actually you're communicating with your dog, the gestures that you're using really do have meaning. Dogs also can, most dogs, understand that if you point with your foot, that has a similar meaning than when you point with your finger. So be aware of the gestures that you use with your dog, because your dog is watching you all the time. And remember, when you're training, when you're actively training your dog, of course your dog is learning, but dogs learn 24/7. So kind of everything you do, your dog is watching and absorbing and picking up on. Okay, so there's so much more about how dogs think. I'm putting it in a tiny little nutshell, but the field of animal cognition, especially when it comes to dogs, has exploded in the last 10 years. Right, how does your dog feel? Let me talk a little bit about this. If I said, does your dog love you? Would you say, well, yeah, of course it loves you. Well, where's the proof? How do you know that your dog actually can experience that emotion of love? Look, we know that dogs have emotions because emotions are biological reactions to the environment and situation. We have emotions too. We respond differently in different environments, in different situations, and dogs do as well. But feelings are human interpretations of emotions. So we can't exactly say how dogs feel. But because, again, of great research and because of just observation, we know that dogs have a very rich emotional life. And that's why it's extremely important that they're treated correctly. And what do I mean by that? Well, dogs have that the very similar physical expressions to emotion as people do. Think about when you go to your favorite football game, or if you're a fan of basketball, and I'm so sorry that nobody can watch any new games right now. But think of how you feel if your team wins. You might jump up and leap up and make a lot of noise. Well, that's exactly what your dog does when you come through the door at the end of the day. They jump up, they're excited, they maybe bark, they make a lot of noise. That physical expression of joy, it's the same as humans. What about when your dog feels sad? They might they might curl themselves up in a ball, take themselves away. They might not want to interact. They might not feel like eating that much. And dogs do get depressed. We see that a lot in shelters. So yes, dogs can feel very sad too. We know that dogs feel fear. And I think this is really important for those of you who might have some more anxious, fearful dogs that you're fostering or you've adopted, because we talk a lot about fear-free. And fear-free is good because we don't want our dogs to experience fear. But I want to tell you that fear is very important. Fear is what we call adaptive. And that means that we all need to have fear in order to stay safe. If you didn't have fear, you probably wouldn't be around by now, because you probably just crossed the road without fearing that a car is going to hit you. You would probably just jump off somewhere, or jump, I don't know, I mean, whatever you want, jump in front of something, or I don't know, drive your car at 160 miles an hour down the highway because you had no fear. Well, fear is not going to keep you safe. Not having fear is not going to keep you safe. So fear is really important for humans and for dogs. But it has to be, as I call, healthy fear. A certain amount of fear through learning, but not fear that it actually compromises your ability to be able to cope and live in the world around you. Now, right now, a lot of people are extremely anxious and extremely fearful. And I understand that. We might have trouble sleeping. I'm having trouble sleeping. It's hard to watch the news. It's hard to see this happening all around us. And when I feel like that, and I feel that anxiety, I just take a little time away and I go sit with my dogs, or I go play with my dogs. And this is really important, not just for us, but for our dogs as well. And what I found that really relieves my stress is play. And so it's so good for humans, but play is also really good for your dogs. And I would say the number one thing that you do when you have a foster dog or you have an adopted dog, that you If they're okay with it, with that human interaction, that you start playing. Now, what I mean by play is that it could be just hanging out and stroking your dog. It could be that your dog loves to chase a ball. It could be that you give your dog a Kong full of food and just leave it for your dog. That's still an interaction. It could be a game of tug. And I'll be talking a little bit more about enrichment and how play is important at the end of this webinar. So the way that we can deal with our feelings and the way that we can help dogs not to absorb the way we feel is to play with them, is to give them mental enrichment, is to give them as much physical exercise as we can, as is safe right now. So your dogs feel many things, and we know that they feel jealousy. We know that they have that ability to empathize, right? They might not truly understand our human experience, but empathy, there's a lot of different ways that dogs can empathize with us. We call it emotional contagion. So for example, if you yawn in front of your dogs, you know how some people will catch your yawn? See if your dog catches your yawn too, because dogs, they don't catch the yawns from other dogs, but they do sometimes catch the yawns from their people. That is a sign of empathy. That's called emotional contagion. So, all right. The other thing about understanding your dog is, how does your dog perceive the world? One of the fun things that I do with clients, or especially with kids, is that if they've got little dogs, I have them lie on the ground. And I go, all right, I want you to experience just a little bit what it's like to be on the ground, to be low to the ground like this. So everybody get on the ground. And if you do that, you'll see that everything is legs, table legs, human legs, legs everywhere, and everything looks really big. So now you understand when you take your little chihuahua out for a walk and some stranger comes and reaches down to pet your little dog, why so many little dogs are like, ah, ah, ah. Because you might do the same if somebody that you don't know touches you. So this is where we talk about advocacy. Advocating for your dog so that that does not happen. And that means avoiding situations where people might want to come and touch your dog. But here's another thing that I think is really important. Your dog is going to have to put up with a lot of rude human behavior in their lives. So why can't you now get them used to rude human behavior? This is a perfect time, when we can't go out so much, to sort of almost inoculate them to what they're going to have to experience. That irritating stranger that thinks it's okay to come into the dog space, lean their hand down, and pet your dog's head. Right. So I teach my puppies, I teach any dog that comes into a home as an adult to cope with rude human behavior. And here's how I do it. I have the dog, I don't care whether the dog is standing or sitting, doesn't matter to me, but I have somebody that the dog knows and is comfortable with. Just literally stand in front of their dog, bend over, and as their hand goes to touch their dog, it can be under the chin or the top of the head, you then have a nice little piece of food in the other hand, and as you lean down and reach over to touch your dog, you can do it on the side. If your dog doesn't like being touched on the head right now, you just give your dog a piece of really yummy food. Make sure that your dog is okay with this. If you don't know the dog that's in your home too well, make sure your dog is okay with this before you touch, right? Because you don't want to put your dog in a situation where your dog's like, don't even come close to me. So this is a dog that knows you, that's comfortable with you, and that you can start teaching them that humans, when they lean over and reach a hand out to touch them, it's okay. So I keep doing this and I keep repeating this. So maybe I might do this 5 or 6 times. I'll leave it for a bit, and then maybe the next hour I'll come and do it again a little bit, but that's it for that day. And then I gradually build it up. When my dog is comfortable with me doing that, then approaching them. So I'm a little distance away. I will then walk up to the dog, lean over, touch them, and give them a piece of food. And then I can do that from a larger distance. And then when the dog is really good and like, yes, good things are going to come to me when I see that action, then you use a person that the dog knows, but maybe is not the #1 trainer. And you gradually build it up now to we can't have strangers coming to the house. And right now I don't want strangers coming up and touching your dogs, because that should not happen with social distancing. But you see how you can build it up so that when you are finally out on the street and we can return to normal, that dog is going to be so good at going, oh yeah, I know this. It's a life skill. Being greeted and being okay with being greeted is a life skill. I don't call this doggy manners. I call teaching things like sit and come and stay and things cues, but I prefer to use the word life skills, because that's what we're teaching our dogs. So I teach my puppies to experience rude human greeting behavior, and I teach them to expect it and to almost welcome it. I do the same with teaching them how to wear a muzzle right from the start. And you can find that on my website, positivity.com. But I have a glass here. I got water in it, sorry. But I have one of those plastic party cups, and I put peanut butter at the end of it or at the bottom of it. And so the dog has to put their muzzle in the cup to get the peanut butter out. And that really, if you don't have a muzzle, it's fine, because that's how you can teach a dog that confinement around the face is okay. Because we're so used to just putting our muzzle, boom, straight on the dog. If they're at the groomer or the vet, and they're freaking out because this is such a strange feeling, because their only method of defense has been taken away from them, and it's really disempowering. So I think of things that my dog might experience out in the big bad world, whether it's a puppy or a newly adopted dog or a foster, and I go, okay, how am I going to address now the things and the situations that I think this dog is going to go to? So now's the perfect time to be able to write a list and go, I want my dog to be able to do this, 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 and this, and this, and then teach it. So you have the time, and the fact is that you've welcomed another being into your home, so thank you. But it's a really great way to set your dog up for success if your dog is going to be adopted out into a new home after being with you. Okay. How does your dog communicate? We're going to be talking a lot about communication, but I do want you to become observers of your dog. And we're going to talk about body language, but when I have my academy, which is the Victoria Stilwell Academy, VSA, and we teach all our students to observe dog body language. We teach them to literally, almost like ethologists, learn language first and look at actual physicality before attaching a label. So before saying that dog is jealous, or that dog is fearful, or that dog is nervous, we don't do that. We go, what is the body language that that dog is exhibiting right at this time? And what does that indicate? What emotional experience do we think the dog is experiencing? But we will not attach a label to it until we are pretty sure that the body language that we're seeing is exactly what's going on. Because what we tend to do as people is to anthropomorphize, oh, that dog's so sad. Oh, that dog was really spiteful. It peed on my bed. It was so spiteful. And dogs don't really do spite. To be guilty or to be spiteful, you have to have this thing called theory of mind, which that's for another day, right? But so we call our dogs stubborn when they don't want to walk. Well, maybe they don't feel well. Maybe their muscles hurt. Maybe it's too hot. Maybe it's too cold. So instead of attaching a label, I think we can be better observers by or have better understanding by watching our dogs and looking at the body language of our dogs. The other thing is staying healthy. Now, I fortunately have a great vet near me that is doing drop-offs. So even though it's not the best thing, at least they're open. And so we can drive there and drop our dog off if our dog has a health issue. But I'm saying the #1 thing that is misdiagnosed, and I'm using a medical term, so I apologize for that, but in dogs that have aggressive response is pain. And so you'll have these trainers or behaviorists that will go in and they will teach your dog to do this, and hopefully it's a positive trainer, and then it's not a negative traditional trainer that puts shock collars or prong collars and stuff on their dogs and, you know, does the sort of the yank and crank 'em thing. Hopefully it is a positive trainer, but, you know, they're making the dog do all of this stuff without realizing that actually the reason why the dog is biting is because it's in pain. So health is essential. Keeping those dogs' teeth clean, making sure that they have their wellness visits, making sure they're eating the right food, making sure they're having the right exercise. And we also talk about mental health as well. Make sure they have the right kind of enrichment. So how do you know what your dog needs? We're talking about understanding our dogs, but really, like, how do we know what they need, right? We know what they think. We have an understanding about their emotional experience. We know body language, but how do we know what they need? And how does a dog's needs match yours? Well, this is where two-way conversations come into play. And I love this picture because the dog's listening, but now I want the dog to have a conversation back. And dogs are talking to us all the time. It's just sometimes it's very subtle, and sometimes we're just too busy. We don't even see it. So I'm going to talk to you about this quickly. And I'm going to talk to you about conversation. In the human, conversation is really important. To feel like you are understood is very important for people. So I want you to think about, and you don't have to write anything down, I just want you to think about, like, when was the last time you had a successful conversation with somebody, and what was it that made that conversation successful? Now, these pictures are weird because, you know, this can only be done with members of your family or people living with you right now, but think about the last time a conversation was successful, how that made you feel. And hold that feeling. Better conversations will increase workplace value. They just do, because good communication is very important. It facilitates better relationships with other people. Makes you feel more confident when you're understood, better understanding between people, and being understood helps you feel like you're being heard. And we all need to feel like we're being heard. But what does it feel like when there are unsuccessful conversations? You don't feel like you're being understood. You might, like me, if I can't get something out. I used to have a stammer as a child, so it was really difficult for me to get out what I really felt inside and to be able to communicate that. So what makes a conversation go wrong? And most of it is lack of understanding and poor communication. That's what it is. And then you think all kinds of things that somebody's thinking about yourself, and you don't communicate it, and blah, blah, blah. The most basic of all human needs is the need to understand and be understood. The most basic of all our needs is to understand and to be understood. The same is true for our dogs. Let's go through the 5 freedoms. Now, for those of you in rescue, for those of you who are fosters, and those of you who work in the shelter system, you know what these 5 freedoms are. Freedom from hunger and thirst, freedom from pain, discomfort, fear and distress, and avoidable or treatable illness and disability. But from a wonderful thing that was written called Unleashing Your Dog, a field guide to giving your canine companion the best life possible by Marc, Bekoff, and Jessica Pierce, they added another 5 freedoms. And I really like this. Freedom to be themselves. How much freedom does a dog have, or does your dog have, that they can be themselves? To express normal behavior. How much freedom do they have to do? How much freedom does my Chihuahua Jasmine have to do the thing she really loves to do, which is chase squirrels? Not a lot. 3, freedom to exercise choice and control. We're going to be talking a little bit about this. And then 4, frolic and have fun. And 5, have privacy, or privacy, I should say, and safe zones. Being able to practice avoidance. I'm going to talk about that in choice, but this is something, it's a headline for you fosters and you adopters to understand how powerful practicing avoidance is for your dog, especially if your dog is nervous. So the ingredients to a successful two-way conversation. We need to understand and read body language. And as I was saying, I was talking about try not to label dog behavior until you can actually sort of almost dissect it, because we don't want to put the wrong label onto something. So let's take a look at the picture of this dog here. This dog looks really happy, like it's running away and or chasing a ball or running in a gorgeous field. But how do we know that? Because I just put a label on it. But if we're to break it down, this is what we teach our students and also people who do our online courses at VSA to read body language. So let's just look at this. First of all, we look at the head. What is the head doing? The ears are up, the mouth is open, the tongue is sort of coming out, but it's relaxed. The eyes kind of bright, but the brow is not furrowed. There's no real tension there. The face looks pretty relaxed. Let's now look at the tail. Now, dogs hold and carry their tails in different ways depending on breed. But this tail to me looks like it's pretty relaxed. If I was a really long tail, maybe the tail's tucked under and maybe that shows that the tail is not relaxed. But I feel like this tail is. Now let's take a look at the body. Is the body fluid? Is it tense? Is it freezing? Dogs that are nervous will do like micro freezes, or sometimes they'll just be very, very still for longer freezes. Dogs that are more relaxed will have fluid body language and kind of really wiggly. Some dogs with no tails, then they might wiggle their butts a bit more, you know, to make up for that lack of tail. So look at the body. And now you look at the context. What is happening in the environment and the situation that is creating the behavior that you see in front of you? Because this dog could be running away from something, or it could be running after a ball. But I think that if we look at that whole picture, we can now say, dog looks pretty happy, body fluid, tail relaxed, head relaxed. I think this dog is happy and running after a ball and having a good time. And once you know how to read body language, you then can teach your dog what to do. And how do you do this? You use what we call the four pillars of positive training. And at VSA, this is what we teach. We teach that you use positive reinforcement, and positive reinforcement means if you give your dog something that your dog likes, there's more of a chance that your dog will repeat the behavior. So if there are good consequences to a behavior, the dog is more likely to repeat that behavior. That's positive reinforcement. The second is to avoid the use of intimidation, physical punishment, or fear. People think that positive trainers that we don't tell our dogs no, and we don't instill boundaries, but we do. We just do it in a way that doesn't intimidate the dog, doesn't make them fearful of us, doesn't cause any pain. And it's vitally important that you don't do that, so that you can say, cut it out to your dog. You can remove your dog from a situation if the situation is too overwhelming. You can give your dog some space. You can set your dog up for success by not putting them in a situation that is going to be overwhelming, where they're going to practice negative behavior. These are all the ways that we can avoid the use of intimidation, physical punishment, or fear. The third is to understand the misconceptions of dominance theory. Obviously, this webinar is too short for me to go into this, but remember this: dominance is not a character trait in dogs. It might be in people, but it's not in dogs. Dominance is a social relationship between animals or humans of the same species. So, for example, when there's this whole idea that dogs come into our homes and they try to become top dog, and they pull us, and if they walk ahead of us, they're trying to be pack leader, or if they sit on the sofa, or if they jump up at us, or if they bite us, or if they're this, then they're trying to exert their dominance and they want to become the number one in the household. And that is just ridiculous. That's a human idea, human insecurity that's being imposed on dogs, because rank is very different in dogs. So when you're establishing dominance in dogs, there is a dominant submissive relationship in dogs, but it's not so that with humans, it's not that they can establish rank and become higher than you in the pecking order. The way dominance works and is successful in a true family pack really is just mom, dad, and offspring, is that animals will naturally defer to mum and dad in the pack, right? The kids will naturally defer to the parents. So packs really work, are familial groups. When you have multi-dogs in a household, those aren't packs. They are normally just groups, because pack really can only be used, that word, for a family pack of dogs, mum, dad, and offspring. So why does squabble sometimes happen in groups of multi-dog households? Well, mostly dominance is all about priority access to something that the dog places a high value on. So let me take my house. We've got Jasmine, my Chihuahua, places a very high value on food. She growls whenever Bella, my Shih Tzu, comes close to that food. She'll growl, tell her to leave. Bella goes, okay, I'll defer to you, and walks away. But Bella, she puts primary access, she puts a lot of value on primary access to her bed. If Jasmine comes near, Bella gives her a look like, yeah, this is my space. And Jasmine naturally defers. That is a good dominance, submissive relationship. That is what I mean by dominance, being in a group of dogs and how it works. It's all about who has priority access to what. Problems occur when two dogs place the same kind of value on an object, okay, or an area, a sleeping area, or some food, or a person. And then, of course, the last is what we talked about, is learning about the dog's experience from their point of view. So I teach my clients, and we also teach our students at VSA then, teach what you want. Don't put so much emphasis on telling your dog off. Teach them what you want to do instead. This is so powerful. So let's say if you've got, I'm going to take my Sadie. My Sadie was a chocolate Labrador. She passed 2 years ago. I miss her every day. She was a rescue dog. She came to us when she was 5 years old, but she had this really embarrassing behavior. And the embarrassing behavior was people would come in and guests would come in, and Sadie would go straight up and she would greet them by sniffing their crotch. Really embarrassing. I'm supposed to be the trainer. So instead of just telling her, no, you can't do that, or keeping her away from them, what I taught her to do instead was a different behavior. I taught her to go pick up a toy whenever guests came in and go and show the toy to guests. Stopped it. So I taught what I wanted her to do instead of always trying to tell her no, 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 no. I reinforced what I like. When I see dogs doing behaviors that I like, I'll reinforce it. And that doesn't always mean with food. I can use toys, praise, play. And then I will redirect what I don't. So if I see that, for example, I've got a puppy that's nipping, instead of like telling the dog off or hurting the dog in any way, or even if a dog that's doing something like jumping up, I won't knee the dog in the chest. I'll actually redirect them onto something. So I will give the puppy a toy to bite on instead of me, or I'll redirect the dog onto something, and then I will teach the jumping dog to go towards somebody and sit instead of jump up, or teach that puppy that all of the nice, yummy, yummy biting goes onto a toy rather than skin and clothes. This is where we come to talk about choice in dogs. And for those of you who deal a lot with children and dogs, you might recognize this, and you might be taking a deep breath and going, oh my gosh, this looks awful. But we really got to talk about choice. And this is where choice is really empowering. This dog doesn't look like it's got a lot of choice. And it doesn't seem like the adults in the household are advocating for this dog, because if we look at behavior, we see a lot of different stress behaviors that this dog is giving out. So after we observe it and we look at that, we can see, yeah, I think that dog is looking stressed. So to understand and to be understood is about choice. Now, normally, say, how many choices have you made today? What time did you get up? What did you eat? What clothes did you put on? What Netflix show did you decide to watch? Because right now, I think you might have a sense of what it's like when choices are taken away from you, when actually now there are limited choices. There are limited ways that you can have choice in your life, because you can't go to the movies, you can't go and do what you want, you can't go outside. And that causes quite a lot of anxiety. I certainly know it causes me anxiety, and it's really quite stressful that we can't, we just can't do what we want to do. And it's actually maybe a little bit now that we can understand the situation that we put our dogs in. So how many choices have you made today? On average, adults make around 30,000 choices a day. And when we talk about choice and motivation for humans, it's been really interesting that, yes, we can use punishment, we can use positive reinforcement, and those are great for teaching your dog mechanical skills, but we're missing a really important part. A really important piece is the dog's ability to have the freedom, the choice to problem solve, to make decisions. Now, studies have shown that children, very young children, if they're given a sense of autonomy, as little ones, they grow up to be more confident adults. You can't just allow the toddler to do whatever, just like you can't allow the dog to do whatever. But if you give them a sense of autonomy, it's so powerful. They become more confident. They get confident, they become more confident, and they have that ability to be able to cope better with the environment around them. Interestingly enough, Google has what's called 20% time. So 80% they have to work on Google's products. 20% of the time, employees can work on what they want. And some of Google's best ideas have come from 20% time, because these people are being given the freedom to create. So how are we going to give our dogs the freedom to create? How are we going to give them a sense of autonomy? How are we going to empower them and make them more confident, which is so important for foster dogs and for adopted dogs? Okay, well, we've got all of these wonderful motivators, don't we? We can take them for walks, we can give them food, we can play with ball with them. They have all these wonderful things that they can do. These are great. We call them extrinsic motivators, right? These are great for teaching your dog. If you do this, you're going to get a ball. Or if you sit, you're going to get food. If you don't pull on the leash, you're going to go and be allowed to sniff that tree. So there are so many ways that we can use these sort of extrinsic motivators to motivate our dogs. But what about intrinsic motivators? What about what your dog really wants to do? Jasmine really wants to chase squirrels. I can't let her just in the park go off and chase squirrels. But I can maybe, in the backyard, teach her a good weight cue. And then if there's something she wants to go chase, because it's a safe area, then I can say, okay, go chase. I can control that. I can give her opportunities, or I can use a flirt pull, which is kind of, you know, how you use a stick with a sort of a line with a feather for cats. You can do the same with something bigger and put a cuddly toy or a soft toy for dogs and sort of whirl it around and they can chase that. What about the dogs that's intrinsic motivators? That's what I want you to think about with your dog that you've just got, or even a dog that you've had there for a long time. Think about what that dog really wants. It could be to sleep. It could be to have space. It could be to go for a walk. It could be to sniff. So we got to think about them, because for people, control leads to compliance. It does. Dogs will, with positive reinforcement and training to sit, stay, and come when called, they will comply. But autonomy, or a sense of autonomy, leads to engagement, and it creates in our dogs, they become better problem solvers. How many choices has your dog made today? Not as many as you have. So as I said, human beings around 33, 35,000 choices a day. Children make about 3,000 choices a day. Dogs, not a lot. So how can you give choice to dogs? How can you empower them? This is so important for dogs, especially dogs that are insecure or fearful. By giving them just a little bit of choice, and this is what I'm going to tell you about practice avoidance. These dogs, you can help them so much just even by doing that. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about walking direction, choice for dogs. Let them choose the walking direction. Let them choose, without pulling, where they want to go on a walk, if it's safe to do so. Choice of toys and treats. So I'll put 2 different types of treats in my hands and I'll go, which one do you want? This one or this one? Dogs will come up and smell, and then you'll find that the one that the dog wants, they're going to spend more time at, and those are the treats the dog gets. You can do that with toys as well. Choice to be touched. Does your dog want to be touched by people that come into your home or not? Does your dog want to be touched by all the children that you've got in your home running around because they're not at school now? Or not? Think about that. Resting place. Does your dog like being in an area of high traffic, or does your dog need to have somewhere where it can take itself off to rest? Maybe somewhere that's a bit quieter. Maybe put some beds around your home and see where your dog chooses to sleep. Maybe your dog doesn't like the bed that you've placed near the kitchen because there's a draft from under the door. The fridge is making a funny sound. Fridges create a lot of problems for dogs that certainly come from puppy mill situations, as do dishwashers, as do vacuum cleaners, we don't think about it, but these dogs that can be really sound sensitive and that have never had a roof over their heads now comes into our homes where every sound is strange and new. So be aware of that. Be aware of things like drafts, too hot, too cold, things about putting that bed in an area where there's less traffic and where that dog can practice avoidance if it needs. As I said, this is the most powerful thing that any dog can do. If you have a dog that's nervous and your dog suddenly takes itself away, let it. Let it. Create a safe zone for your dog. That's a crate that the door is always open, but no child can put their fingers in it and nobody goes up to. Unless you need to go up and get the dog out. That is their safe zone, their resting place. If you don't have a crate or you have a baby gate, make it a room that your dog can go to. If you don't have a baby gate, make it an area of the room that the dog can go to. That is a no-go area for children or for anybody else that in your house, apart from when you need to go get your dog or when a responsible adult can go and get the dog as well. That is your dog's safe zone, and that is the place that when things are too much, your dog can take themselves off to their safe zone. If you have a multi-dog household, you can have numerous safe zones. Your dogs will tell you where they like to be. Now, many dogs like to be together, but some need space, and that's especially important right now. Multi-dog households, dogs that have been brought in foster situations. Now, not only are you coping with a new being in your life, your dogs are coping with new beings in your life, your cats, other animals you might have, and now you're all having to adjust. So be cognizant of that and really observe where your dog or dogs feel comfortable. That is how we can give our dogs choice. So, reading body language, choice, and teaching them leads to successful conversations. You learn your dog body language. You share your routines. So, for example, if you have adopted or you're fostering, what is the routine from the shelter that you have got your dog from? Keep your dog on that similar routine for a while. Feeding at the same kind of times, maybe walking at the same kind of times as you transition that dog into your home. Really important. Provide as much choice for the dog as you can. Start the conversation. And don't forget to put yourself into their paws. And here's where enrichment is vital. We're nearly at the end of this, I promise. And then you can ask me some questions. I know this is going on a little longer than an hour, and I apologize for that, but there is just too much information to impart. Providing enrichment. So mental enrichment can almost be as tiring as physical exercise. If you think about now, for all of the kids that are having school from computers, that they're tired at the end of the day because that mental just reading all the time and concentrating all the time, sitting at their computer is exhausting. The same can happen to dogs. So yes, we can give them physical exercise. We can play tug games like this. We can give them toys that they can play with, that they can chew, and that they can get rid of all their angst on that. Yes, we can play ball with them and get them running if it's safe and you have a space to do so. But what are other ways that you can entertain your dog? Well, there are puzzle toys that you can get, and you hide food in the puzzle toys and you can get your dog to eat its meal through a toy. Or you can put some food in a Kong or other different kinds of toys, and you can hide them around your yard or in the back or in your home, and you can send your dog on a treasure hunt. Easter's coming up. If you want to do that, you know, we call it the Easter egg hunt. They're not real eggs, but you're sending your dog onto a little treasure hunt. You make it easy for your dog to do it to begin with by just having one toy, stuffing it with food, and then putting it in a place where the dog can see it. And then you release your dog and say, go seek. And the dog goes and gets its little ball with food inside it. And then once the dog is finished with that, you pick it up again, and then you put it a little bit further away so that now the dog has to travel further to go get it, and you say, go seek. And then you keep doing that, and then you gradually sort of start to hide it a little bit. So now the dog really doesn't just use its eyes, it now has to use its sense of smell. So by doing kind of sort of scenting games with dogs is really important. A wonderful book that, if you have time to read it, is called Being a Dog by Alexandra Horowitz. And this book really gives you an idea of how dogs see the world through their noses. It's a fascinating book, and it truly helps you understand and appreciate your dog more. Now, if you want to find out more about cognition and how dogs think and feel and learn, and how to build confidence, we have a free course that I know that our social media team are going to be putting in the comments. Our free course is called Building Your Dog's Confidence. It's totally free. It's a starter course. It's about an hour long. And there's many ways there that you can build your dog's confidence. Plus, there are some games that you can teach your dog, things like that. But what are the building blocks you need to teach your dogs to be confident dogs? Then we do have a fundamental course. It's paid. It's about 10 hours. And that goes deeper into how dogs think, feel, and learn. And for those of you who are interested in a career in dog training, now is the time. You can take a look at our dog trainer course, which is an online course. We do have an in-person track as well. Hopefully, by the time we're all done with this, that you will be able to do that. But all of our stuff, or most of it, is online. And if you're interested in a career as a dog trainer, or you want to add to what you're doing, the work that you're doing for a shelter or something, then do check out the course at vsdogtrainingacademy.com. I want to end with something very exciting we're doing. And this is for what you guys need. For us who work so hard in the shelter world, in the animal welfare world, that you need. And every dog owner needs. The problems that I was seeing is that trainers like me, we do know a lot, and we go into homes and we just give loads of information like I'm giving you now. Or we give complex. If you've got a fearful dog, these are all the steps you have to do to get to the point where your dog can do this. So I was like, how can I make it easier for people who are adopting, who are fostering, who are working with dogs in a shelter environment and at home? How can I make it easier for adopters, or for dogs that are being adopted, to stay in homes? For all dogs, regardless where they've come from, to stay in homes, to make it as easy for people that don't have a lot of time to deal with, to understand, to teach, and to deal with any behavior problems and do it quickly. So I came up with BRAVE, coping strategies for every dog. The more that we develop this, the more that we see that we have to add. So we are hoping that this will be completed by at least the fall. But this is for all dogs. It doesn't matter whether you've got a nervous Nelly or you've got a dog that's really just very confident, but comes across a situation and goes, oh, I don't know about that. So it's for every dog. And BRAVE stands for bold, for confidence. BRAVE stands for resilient, to build resilience, because that's what I've been talking about today. When I talk about the muzzle, when I talk about the preparing your dog for muzzle, or preparing your dog for rude human greeting behavior, what we're talking really is building resilience. Dogs, domesticated dogs, are very, very adaptable. If you think about the dog you just brought into your home, what it takes to come from an environment that maybe you don't know the previous environment, and now it's in your home, and now it's dealing with all this new stuff, yet it adapts. Domestication means an animal's ability to adapt or cope with novelty. And dogs are amazing at that. So if you're having a little trouble, don't worry, dogs are very adaptable. And a lot of headway can be made. It's also valued. For so long, our dogs they're not being listened to. And I am not, for those of you who know me, I am despise with my every being shock collars. Prong collars and choke collars that are designed to cause pain and constrict around dogs' necks do so much physical and emotional damage. I'm a much more proponent of harnesses. I want to value dogs. I want their emotional experience to be valued too. How do we help people value their dog's emotional experience really quickly? And that's why I'm saying, hey, because look, quick fixes, people are out there saying, yeah, we can do this. There's quick fixes for dogs. We just need to put a shock collar on, we need to put choke collar. And the positive trainers are going, yes, but how are you demeaning the dog's experience like that? Why? If you've got an emotional problem, are you just going to go to the therapist and after 30 minutes, you're going to be okay? You're going to come out there and everything's going to be fixed? No. So why are we saying that all we got to do for a dog that's nervous and lunging at the other end of the leash is to put a choke collar on or a prong collar or shock them? No. We have to value the emotional experience, understand the dog, meet it where it's at, and teach the dog what to do instead. That's how we can avoid and help dogs. I don't care whether you've got the smallest Chihuahua or the largest Great Dane. I don't care whether you've got this cutest little puppy or you've got a really compromised large breed dog. This works for all dogs. And then, of course, it's empowering. So Brave is first and foremost about dogs, but it's also about people. Because we cannot forget that other end of the leash. What you're doing right now for that dog is the most incredible. And we can say, hey, you're doing an amazing job. You're brilliant. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you. But I want to go a step further. To give you tools and use solutions and to empower you as well as that dog. And thankfully, the Petco Foundation are doing a series of webinars because that's giving you information that's going to help you better understand, work with, and find solutions for behavior problems, will empower you to work with that new dog that you've just brought in. So I'm very excited about it. If you want to find out more information about what we do, we're talking about humans here. We have, there will be a lot of interactive materials that people can use, that shelters will be able to get, that can give to adopters, that trainers will be able to get, that can give to adopters, courses. All of these are going to be courses on our platform, positively.com, as well as the Victoria Stilwell Academy. And so that you can do hands-on with the dogs as well, so that you can have a good life with them. So if you want to find out more, you can register and we will give you updates and then give you more information by going to positively.com/brave. That's it. Gosh, I know it was long, and thank you sort of for bearing with me, but do you have any questions? If you can ask me your questions now, and let me know what your questions are. So we're just getting some of the questions up here. I'm going to put my glasses on because I can't see anything without them. So fortunately, my social media team are putting some questions up here. Okay, so let's take a look. Oh, Julie, any tips for helping dogs with separation anxiety ease back into being alone after we return to work? Yeah, I love this. I love this. Is a brilliant question. Why is it a brilliant question? Because so I've been asked it so many times. Well, oh, we got a puppy now and we're never going to be away from them. How are they going to cope when we leave? Or I just got this new foster. How are we going to cope when I have to go back to work? Now I'm going to transition this dog into a new home and it's going to have anxiety on separation. Here's what you do. Go into your bathroom and shut the door. Go into your bedroom and shut the door. Go have time away from your dog. Go outside the home if you can go outside your home, outside your apartment door, and just stand outside the apartment door with the apartment closed. Do all of the protocols that we would do to empower dogs to become more independent by coping when they're away from you. Doing that in the home. You can do it if you have a garden or a backyard. You can do that as well. If you can go for a walk, just go for a walk yourself. This will give dogs experience of being away from you for certain periods of time, even when we're under lockdown. So good luck with that. I think it was an absolutely brilliant question to start off with. Elizabeth, my family got a foster last Saturday. Yeah, we're getting a rescue puppy, 12 weeks Saturday. I've always had cats. How should I introduce these two together? The foster is a 2-year Newfoundland. Ah, favorite, I love. In fact, we fostered a Newfoundland as well. The puppy is a lab mix. Went to Petco and got all the things. Thank you for the seminar. Okay, so always had cats. Well, then good. Then you're already halfway there. So first of all, I've got a book out there called The Ultimate Guide to Raising a Puppy. It came out in October. And so if you go to Amazon.com, get the book because it's got lots of great information about raising a puppy. Introductions. Well, if you can, and you can do introductions on neutral territory, if you can be outside, do it on neutral territory away from the house. Do it in a space. If you can't and you have to do it inside, make sure that there's the largest space as possible because when you're introducing animals, their confinement can make them feel a bit more unconfident. The reason why we say do it on neutral territory outside is because there's more space, but there's also more things for both dogs to do. To sniff, to look around, to listen to different things. So they're not just honed in on each other, there's actually a lot of distractions and that's what you want. You want to have a place that has space and distractions so the dogs have the ability to do other things called displacement behaviors, maybe itching, maybe sniffing, maybe scratching, maybe going and looking around, maybe sneezing, maybe, I don't know, whatever, maybe yawning. These are all displacement behaviors. It's kind of like biting your nails, like a little, which sometimes people do displacement behavior by twirling their hair. It's sort of calming, but it also, you know, if we yawn and we're really uncomfortable, we yawn in a situation that we're really uncomfortable in, maybe it's a kind of sort of just don't look at me, like carry on doing what you're doing. And I'm just going to maybe just read this book whilst you're doing what you're doing. That's what we call displacement behavior. So that's my first piece of advice to you. Do it on leash first, then when you bring the dogs, have them a little bit on leash to begin with, and then you can let them off leash, but observe. But realize, please, the Newfoundland is a very big dog. Your puppy will grow into a big dog, but it's still a puppy. Puppies can be very annoying, even to larger dogs. So they must have that separation as well. And you must only have interaction when you are actively there to supervise them. Okay, brilliant question. Okay, I know that we got so many questions. We're going to do 3 more. How do I get my dog to stop pulling on walks? I have 2 dogs, Samoyeds. I think I just pronounced it correctly. Okay, Denise, beautiful dogs. I would say harnesses, but these dogs have very long coats. I would still say harnesses, but it's sometimes harnesses with dogs that have long coats can be difficult to put on. I would say that those are the best things. So have something on your dogs where it's not going to cause pressure on the throat. And it's going to help you whilst you're teaching them. And what I do is that I take 1 dog at a time. So don't train them together, 1 dog at a time. And I'll take them outside. Well, first start this in the house. Sorry, I put a leash on and I'll just sort of walk up and then walk down. If the dog pulls me, I'm just going to gently kind of guide them and go off in the other direction. When the dog is really good in the house, I'll do it in the backyard. And when the dog is really good in the backyard, I'll go out into where the dog is walked. And basically it's saying, if you pull me, we're just going to go in the other direction. But if you walk where there's kind of a nice U in that leash, then you can go forward. So that's why I said with a no-pull harness, like regular harnesses where there's an attachment just behind the shoulders, can actually encourage dogs to pull more. So I have a positively no-pull harness that has 2 attachments here at the chest. Why 2? A lot have just 1 here, but you'll find most harnesses have natural play in them, so that when the dog does pull, the sort of the ring comes out over here, and therefore you lose that no pulling action. So that's why I designed a harness that had 2 rings on either side. So if you're walking this side of the dog, you attach one end of the leash to the loop that is furthest away from you, and the other end of the leash to the loop that's on the shoulders. And then when the dog pulls, the dog literally cannot move forward, because that action, if a dog pulls, will cause the dog's body to turn. If you're walking on the dog on that side, you attach the one end of the leash to this loop. So you'll find that when the dog pulls a little bit, the loop comes to the center of the chest, right? And then when the dog relaxes, the loop goes like that again. So you never lose that no pull action, because the dog's center of gravity is right here in the chest. So if you can lead that dog by the center of gravity, then your dog is going to pull less. So that's the positively no pull harness. If it sounds like a sales pitch, I'm sorry, but I designed it that every single piece on it can be adjusted so that it sort of conforms to any shape and dogs cannot get out of them. Okay, I think I've got time for one more. I love this from Alice. Regarding intrinsic behaviors, my young dog really wants to play with our cats. How can we approach this in the comfort of all animals? The cats are confident and sometimes respond with play behaviors too. Yeah, there are some intrinsic behaviors that dogs cannot do. And we don't want to encourage to play with cats at all. So what other thing do they really like? I would be careful, because I don't want to encourage the prey or chase behavior by sort of utilizing cuddly toys and stuff. So there are other things your dogs can do. Can you send them on a treasure hunt, like I was talking about? Can you put food into toys and go get them to go find them? Can you, instead of feeding your dogs from a food bowl, feed them from interactive toys instead? And if you've got a multi-dog household, make sure that if the dogs fight over food, that they're in separate rooms, or at least separated by a baby gate, so that they can work on problem solving, getting the food out of these toys, whilst they feel confident and comfortable and not stressed that the dog close to them is going to come and steal their stuff. So try finding something else that you think might be an intrinsic motivator. Okay, there are many more questions. Please go to positively.com, because you'll find more information there. And again, I'm sorry I've gone over time, but I really hope that you have got a lot out of this. I want to say thank you again to Rachel, to Suzanne and Petco Foundation for putting this on, for hosting this. And to all of you out there, be safe, take care of yourselves, and thank you so much for fostering and adopting. And I hope that we'll all get back to normal very soon.
Thank you so much, Victoria. We have a few questions in the comments about, will these links be available when all is over? Team, yes, we will be sure to link all of the fantastic books and resources that Victoria mentioned. So stay tuned. You will have a link to this recording, as well as additional resources in your inboxes within 24 hours. Thank you all so much for joining us. Again, Victoria, we cannot thank you enough. This was fantastic. So much information. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in.